Boldwood presents The Do-Over, written by Phoebe MacLeod and read by Victoria Fox. Prologue. Do you ever stop to ponder what pivotal events in your life shaped you? I don't. For me, everything changed on the day Dad left. Although it's much less regular than it used to be when I was younger, it still haunts my dreams occasionally, playing out the same way every time. It opens on one of those crisp autumn days where the sky is bright but the wind is cold. I'm 8 years old, and I'm walking home from school. Mum is holding my right hand, and my sister Safi is on the other side of Mum. She's 3 years older than me and resists holding hands with Mum because it's babyish. Before we get home, there's something I need to tell you girls, Mum says in a quiet voice. It's about your father. I glance at Safi, meeting her eye briefly. News about Dad is never good. What's he done now? Is it the money thing again? Safi asks with the world-weary tone of a preteen desperately trying to act older than her years. I'm afraid so, Mum says gently. Safi rolls her eyes. What did they take? None of us are strangers to visits from the bailiffs. It's been a constant pattern of our childhood so far. Every time it happens, Dad promises to turn over a new leaf, showers us with tatty gifts, and things improve for a while. Then, just when we think that he might finally mean it, the bailiffs turn up again to repossess the TV and anything else they can squeeze a bit of value out of, and we go back to square one. It's a bit more serious this time, love, Mum tells her, sighing deeply. It seems that your father hasn't been paying the rent on our house, which he didn't tell me about until this morning when the man from the council turned up. I'm not sure how to tell you this, girls, so I'm just going to say it. They've thrown us out of our home. But where are we going to live? Safi asks in horror. I've spoken to Nan, and she's agreed to let us stay with her until we get back on our feet. She's waiting for us at home. The important thing you need to hear is that none of this is your fault, and it's not your job to try to fix it. Dad will fix it, though, won't he? I ask. Not this time, Thea, love. Your dad's gone. Gone? Gone where? Another deep sigh. I don't know, and I don't particularly care. There comes a time when you just can't wait any longer for someone to make the right choice. He's had chance after chance, and I can't do this anymore. It's not fair on me, and it's not fair on the pair of you. From now on, he's no longer part of our life. It's us three against the world. I can still remember the burning sense of humiliation as we loaded the bin bags containing our meagre possessions into the back of Nan's car, under the watchful gaze of our neighbours. People we'd counted as friends suddenly wanted nothing to do with us, as if we had some infectious disease they were frightened of catching. The only place I felt safe was school, where the teachers watched carefully to make sure we weren't bullied. We never saw Dad again. Mum got a letter a few years later to say that he'd died and did she want to organise a funeral for him. By then, our lives were already radically different. As soon as Safi and I were safely ensconced in secondary school, Mum had swapped her part-time job at the shop for a full-time role as a receptionist for a firm of accountants. There, she met Phil, who couldn't be more different from Dad if he tried. However, after wrestling with it for a while, she decided that closure would be good for all of us. So she paid the fees, and we went to Dad's funeral. It was a perfunctory service, and we were the only mourners. We didn't cry. I don't think any of us really knew what to feel. Afterwards, Bill bought us all ice creams to break the somber mood, and I'm not sure we thought about Dad at all after that. We certainly didn't talk about him. Given that our story has, generally speaking, a happy ending, I sometimes wonder why the dream still haunts me. I know the answer, of course. It's to remind me of the seed that was planted that day as I looked out of the back of Nan's car at our securely padlocked house. I'd always been a happy, slightly lackadaisical child, content to potter along in the middle ranks. That day changed my outlook completely. I studied harder than anyone else, achieving top grades across the board in every set of exams. Nobody was ever going to take my home from me again. I was never going to feel that humiliation again. I was going to defy the odds and be the best I possibly could be at everything. Chapter 1. I sense Margaret's approach long before she comes into view. Every fibre of my being has been on high alert since this morning, and I subconsciously sit up a little straighter in my chair and focus my eyes firmly on the agreement I've been trying to work on. I need to come across as a totally dedicated professional, today of all days. "They're ready for you now, Thea. Would you like to come with me?" she says softly. "Bring your things." As we make our way through the open plan area where the junior associates sit, I'm aware of their eyes following me. My heart is thudding so hard it feels like it might smash a rib and break free at any moment, and my hands are trembling with nerves. I've put everything I've got into this, and if I haven't been successful, I'll have to wait another whole year before the opportunity comes again, so the stakes couldn't be higher. Although nothing will be announced officially until the end of the day, when all the candidates have been seen, the office grapevine has been humming and, so far, only one of my fellow applicants seems to have made partner. Alana, who was widely considered to be one of the favourites, was spotted crossing the lobby in floods of tears earlier, so it would seem she didn't make it. Morton Lansdowne is one of the largest firms on the corporate law landscape, as well as the London office where I am based. We have offices in pretty much every major capital city in the world. For most wannabe corporate lawyers, just getting a traineeship here is considered the dream ticket. Becoming a partner, albeit a junior one, is akin to winning the lottery. The difference between partnership and winning the lottery, however, is that only one of them has any element of luck. Put it this way, you don't join a company like Morton Lansdowne if you value personal time. There is a work-life balance, in as much as you live to work. The harder you work, the better you will do. If you expect idiotic things like set office hours, uninterrupted weekends and holidays, then this life is not for you. One of the highlights of the year, apart from Partnership Day, is Trainee Induction Day. Like most big law firms, we take a set number of law graduates onto our trainee program each year. They spend 2 years with us, moving between departments to get maximum exposure to the different types of work we do for our corporate clients. At the end of the traineeship, only a handful are selected to stay with us as junior associates. The rest, to use the office term, are released back into the wild. As part of the induction day, the existing associates are invited to meet the new trainees over lunch in the office, and there's always a good deal of speculation afterwards about which of them are going to make it and which don't stand a chance. The lift is taking forever to come. Next to me, Margaret is gently drumming her fingers against her thigh. As personal assistant to Martin Osborne, the managing partner of the London office, she will already know my fate, and it's hard not to try to read meaning into every little micro-gesture. Where I'm so tense, I suspect even my eyelids are stretched tight. She appears to be totally relaxed. Is that good news, or is it because she's not taking me seriously? "Stop it, Thea," she murmurs discreetly. "Stop what?" I whisper back. "Trying to read me. This isn't my first rodeo. Do I know whether you've been successful or not? Yes. Am I going to somehow give it away between here and the boardroom? No. I'm a lawyer, Margaret. I wouldn't be very good at my job if I wasn't trying to read you. And I'm Martin's PA because of my absolute discretion, among other things. So I can assure you it's a fruitless exercise. Ah, here we are at last." The lift doors open and we step inside. I'm surprised to see my friend Alasdair among the other occupants. He and I joined in the same intake and we hit it off pretty much straight away. He works in property now, rather than mergers and acquisitions where I am, so we rarely see each other. Conversation in the lift is severely frowned upon, so I meet his eyes, raise my eyebrows quizzically, and mouth Singapore at him. In return, he subtly draws his finger across his neck to indicate that something has obviously gone south with the transaction he was working on, hence his return to London. When the lift stops at the 6th floor, Alasdair steps out, mouthing good luck to me as he goes. On the 7th, the remaining occupants disembark, leaving just Margaret and me to climb to the top floor. By the time the lift pings and the doors swing open on the 8th floor, where the senior partners have their offices and the boardroom is located, my legs are trembling and I've had to clamp my jaws together to stop my teeth chattering. Margaret is obviously aware of my increasing anxiety because she touches me lightly on the arm. "Try not to have a coronary," she says with a smile. "I am first aid trained, but I'd prefer not to have to demonstrate my skills today, if it's all the same to you." Although her tone is light, office folklore has many stories of associates having meltdowns of various kinds on this journey. One famously threw up in the lift 2 years ago. Incredibly, he's still with the firm but has never submitted another partnership application and had to move to another office to escape the fallout. The most humiliating, though, the one we all dread, dates from the year after I joined. I would dismiss it as apocryphal if I hadn't been a trainee in the senior associates team at the time. He was the absolute model of what we believed a partner should be. Fiercely intelligent and a real powerhouse. Nothing escaped his notice. Rumour had it that he had a flat in the Barbican somewhere, but we used to joke that he probably didn't know exactly where it was, and had definitely never been inside it, because he was always in the office. On the day of the partnership announcements, Margaret came to get him like she always has. Although we tried to focus on our work, very little got done while we waited to see whether he'd made it. An hour went by, and none of us suspected anything unusual. For some people, the meetings are very quick because the senior partners are all in agreement. For others, the meetings can drag on, taking the form of a final Viva interview, a last chance for the candidate to prove they meet the criteria and convince the skeptics. After 2 hours, we were getting fidgety, and nearly 3 hours had gone by before word trickled down that our man had left the firm and wouldn't be returning. By the end of the day, another senior associate had taken his place at the head of our team, but it wasn't until weeks later that we learned what had happened. As we had suspected at the time, the meeting had taken the form of an intense interview, and the pressure, on top of the exhaustion from the hours he'd been putting in, had proved too much for our candidate. He'd fainted in the boardroom, and, if that wasn't humiliating enough, he'd apparently wet himself while out cold. The memory of that disaster serves as a prompt, and, as we're making our way along the corridor, I turn to Margaret. "Have I got time for a quick trip to the loo?" I ask. "Yes," she replies, "but hurry. The senior partners don't like to be kept waiting." The toilets are in the same place on every floor, so although this is probably only the second time I've been up here since joining Morton Lansdowne, I know where to find them. Having squeezed out every last drop, I wash my hands and stare at myself in the mirror. "Come on, Thea," I tell my reflection fiercely. "Knock them dead." "All set?" Margaret asks when I rejoin her in the corridor. "Yes, thank you." The offices of law firms in London tend to fall into 2 distinct camps. The first are those who have probably been around since the dawn of time. Their offices are dark, with lots of polished wood and brass fittings. Although it's a well-established firm with a long history, Morton Lansdowne falls firmly into the second category. Our offices are light and modern. The boardroom that we're now approaching could be straight off the set of a TV series like Suits. The glass wall has a carefully applied translucent pattern with the letters ML etched into it in a swirly font at regular intervals. It gives the appearance of transparency, without you actually being able to see anything meaningful from the outside. Unlike the lower floors, which have light-coloured doors and desks with dark grey carpets, the carpet on this floor is light grey deep pile, with dark mahogany-coloured doors that reach all the way to the ceiling, no doubt to create an air of extra gravitas. My heart has given up trying to break out of my ribcage as Margaret knocks on the boardroom door. It's now taken up residence in my throat, and, for a moment, I worry that I might join the Folklore Hall of Fame by throwing up in front of the senior partners. "Come in," a deep voice that I recognise as belonging to Martin Osborne calls. "I have Thea Rogers for you," Margaret tells him before standing aside to let me pass. As soon as I'm over the threshold, the door closes behind me with a soft click.
Thea, thank you so much for sparing the time to see us,
Martin says warmly, as if I'm somehow doing him a favour.
Please, take a seat.
The sound of my name on the lips of the most powerful man in the London office sparks a familiar, momentary feeling of resentment. The truth is that I fell out of love with my name when I reinvented myself. To me, it sounds soft and a little doughy, the kind of name that might suit a librarian, but not a top-flight lawyer. I should have been called something more warrior-like, such as Xena. When I was at secondary school, one of my classmates was called Xanthi, and although I ribbed her about it along with the rest of the class, I always secretly envied her. Having X as an initial makes you stand out. Thea Rogers is the precise opposite. It's an instantly forgettable name without a single hard consonant to give it some bite. This brief distraction is thankfully enough to allow me to make it from the doorway to the seat Martin has indicated without any disasters. Although there are a couple of other empty seats, most of the senior partners are here, I notice as I look around the room.
I think you know everyone, Martin continues, and we obviously all know you, so unless you feel it's necessary, I suggest we skip introductions and get straight down to it. Jeremy and Helen couldn't be with us in person today, but they have dialed in remotely.
He indicates a screen on the wall behind him with two faces staring out of it. Hello, Thea, they say together.
Right. Before we start, have you got any questions you'd like to ask us about the process?
Martin says to me. No, thank you.
Great.
He taps a button on the laptop open in front of him, and a slide appears on the screen with my face and a name underneath it.
As you'll be aware, Thea, a partnership at Morton Lansdowne is only offered to truly exceptional candidates. In our business, reputation is everything, and we cannot allow that reputation to be diluted by mediocrity. I'm sure I don't need to bore you with the precise figures, but the percentage of people who join us as trainees like you did and subsequently go on to make partner is witheringly small. Regardless of the outcome, you should therefore be immensely proud of the fact that you've made it as far as this meeting. Whatever happens, I want you to hold on to that.
I'm listening intently to every word, trying to gauge which way this is going to go, and so far it's not sounding positive. My mood is plummeting fast.
Let us look at the specifics of your application,
he continues, tapping the laptop again to bring up a graph.
From this, we can see that you have consistently exceeded your billing targets every quarter since being promoted to senior associate. That's no mean feat. We deliberately set aggressive targets here, not just for the good of the company, but also as a means of identifying those with the kind of stamina we're looking for in our next leaders.
He taps again and a pie chart comes up.
You are also held in high regard by your colleagues and your team members. It doesn't influence our decision, but when we asked them whether they felt you would be the right kind of leader for a firm like ours, their response was universally positive. More importantly, and I don't have a slide for this as it's not something we can quantify on a graph, the clients value you. You're seen as someone who is trustworthy, hardworking, and with an exceptional eye for detail.
Okay, this is sounding more positive. I allow the flame of hope to reignite.
However,
Martin continues,
while these are all laudable qualities in a senior associate, they don't automatically translate into a good candidate for partnership. A partner has to take all of these superlative qualities and manage to add an extra layer to them. Do you understand?
Shit, I allowed myself to hope too soon. Yes, I say.
As a partner, you are an ambassador for the firm. Our partners are the public face of who we are, and clients will hire or reject us based in no small part on whether they like the partners or not. We're therefore looking for someone who can earn the respect of a new client and bring them on board, making Morton Lansdowne their trusted guide for all aspects of commercial law. As senior partners, we have to decide whether we believe you have those qualities. There is also your age to take into account. At 32, you are the very bottom of the age range that we would even begin to consider for partnership. I'm not betraying any confidences if I tell you that some of the senior partners felt that it might be better for you to spend another couple of years as a senior associate and reapply after that.
That's it then. They think I'm too young. It's all been for nothing, and I focus all my energy on maintaining a neutral expression. The howls of frustration will have to wait until I'm alone so nobody witnesses my moment of weakness.
Deciding whether or not to offer a partnership is a responsibility we take very seriously,
Martin is saying, but I'm barely listening now that I know my fate.
And I can assure you that we haven't taken your application lightly. After considerable thought and discussion, we have agreed that you do exhibit all the qualities we're looking for, and we'd therefore like to offer you the position of junior partner at Morton Lansdowne. Congratulations, Thea.
For a moment I stare at him, dumbfounded. Did I hear that correctly? The ripple of applause from the other senior partners would indicate that I did.
Now,
Martin says when the applause has died down,
you know the rules, I'm sure. Regardless of the outcome, we expect you to leave the office immediately. We will make a formal announcement at the end of the day, after which you are of course welcome to share the news with friends and family. You will also have the weekend to conduct any celebrations you deem appropriate, and then we expect you in the office ready to go at 7 o'clock on Monday morning. Do you have any questions before I ask Margaret to escort you out?
No, thank you. I won't let you down, I promise. Martin smiles.
See that you don't.
As I descend towards the ground floor with Margaret by my side, I allow myself the tiniest of fist pumps. After all those years, and particularly the last 4 months without a single day off, I've actually bloody done it. Thea Rogers, youngest ever female partner at Morton Lansdowne at the tender age of 32. Chapter 2. As I make my way back to my terraced house in Walthamstow, I look around at the other people on the tube, half expecting them to pick up that something extraordinary has just happened to me, that I'm different somehow. There's a girl sitting opposite me with big headphones clamped over her ears and her head buried in a dog-eared book that she probably picked up in a charity shop, and I find myself willing her to raise her eyes and recognize me, as if I'm some sort of celebrity because I'm now a partner at a major law firm. It's irrational nonsense, I know it is. Within the walls of Morton Lansdowne, I will definitely be a celebrity for the next week or so, but even there, it won't be long until I'm just one of the partners. Out here, there's no reason for anyone to give a damn, but it's hard not to feel a tinge of disappointment nonetheless. I'm burning to share the news with someone, but grabbing a random stranger and blurting it out is unlikely to end well, particularly in a city like London. Also, there's the moratorium to consider. I check my watch. 4.5 hours before I can tell anyone. The house is silent as I close the front door behind me and pick up the post from the floor. But I can almost hear its question in my head. It's lunchtime on a Friday. What are you doing here? I'm inordinately proud of my house, even though I barely spend any time in it. When I first started as a trainee at Morton Lansdowne, I deliberately looked for the cheapest lodgings I reckoned I could put up with. I ended up in a shared flat in Peckham, with a box room so small even a standard single bed wouldn't fit in it. The enterprising landlord, evidently keen to squeeze every drop of income from his investment, had fashioned a bed using a sheet of plywood supported by batons fixed to the wall. The mattress was a foam affair that he'd shortened by simply chopping the end off. It was boiling in summer, freezing in winter, and the whole place smelled permanently of weed, thanks to the thriving business of a guy on the floor above. I didn't care about any of that, though. It was cheap, and that enabled me to start saving. When I made junior associate, the temptation to move out to somewhere better was nearly irresistible, but I stuck to my plan and watched my savings grow almost exponentially. My very limited downtime was spent researching property prices in different parts of London, always following the mantra to look for the shittiest house on the nicest street, as that was where the best potential growth lay. By the time I had enough to put down an acceptable deposit and secure a mortgage, I knew exactly what I was looking for and where. I also knew that I wasn't going to get the best bang for my buck by playing safe and going through an estate agent. To my mother and stepfather's horror, I snapped up my 3-bedroom terraced house in Walthamstow at auction, without even visiting it to look around first. It was a probate sale, described in the listing as being in need of modernisation, which turned out to be something of an understatement. Luckily for me, it was at least structurally sound, but that was where the good news ended. For the first 3 years, I essentially lived in a building site, renovating room by room as I could afford to. The bathroom was first. The original was at the back of the house on the ground floor, with horribly stained turquoise sanitary ware that made my skin crawl. With the help of Brian, a local builder who defied the stereotypes by charging surprisingly reasonable prices and working his socks off even during my frequent absences, the bathroom was soon relocated into one of the first-floor bedrooms, with gorgeous contemporary fixtures and fittings and a shower nearly powerful enough to take your skin off. Once that was done, I found I could live quite happily with the rest of the house in various states of chaos. It was only an occasional place to sleep, after all, and Brian kept me abreast of the renovations by email when I wasn't around. The finished house is almost unrecognisable from the rundown property I bought. The front door still opens onto a narrow hallway with the original Victorian tiles on the floor, and there is a door on the left that leads into a small front room that I've set up as a study. Useful for weekend working when I don't need to be in the office. That's where the similarities end, though. The real magic happens when you step through the door at the end of the hallway. The middle reception room, original kitchen and bathroom have been combined into a large open-plan living area that spans the entire rear of the house. There's a high-tech kitchen on one side and a floating staircase tucked into the corner on the other. Between them sit 2 comfortably squishy sofas for entertaining, not that I ever do, separated by a low coffee table. We've pushed the back wall as far as we dared with a conservatory extension that houses the dining area. Bifold doors open onto what remains of the garden, where a small patio is surrounded by hanging baskets and abundant flower beds that I pay a gardening firm handsomely to maintain. The post yields nothing of interest, a couple of bills that I can ignore because they're paid by direct debit, and the usual collection of takeaway menus and other junk. I dump my laptop bag in the study and consign the post to the bin before kicking off my shoes in the hallway and wandering through to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. This plan quickly falls apart when I realise that the box of tea bags in the cupboard is empty and the milk in the fridge has solidified. I shove it in the bin without either daring to open it or read the sell-by date. A vague memory of using the last tea bag comes to mind, and as I explore the mental picture, I'm horrified to realise that there was snow on the ground at the time. I glance to the left, at the wall that Brian suggested he paint with blackboard paint so I could use it as an expression wall, and sure enough, the word tea bags is scrawled on there in my handwriting. With a free weekend stretching ahead of me and currently no idea as to how I'm going to fill it, I decide a shopping trip is in order. I'll head to the Sainsbury's on the high street and stock up with a few essentials and one of those mini bottles of champagne so I can celebrate when the news breaks on the company website. I could even get a full-sized one. Seeing as Alasdair is in the country, he might be free to come and help me celebrate. With a smile on my face, I lock the front door behind me and set off down the pavement. All being well, I should be able to kill a couple of hours on this trip, which would take me almost to the magic moment at 5 o'clock when I can start ringing people to tell them my news. As I dump my bag of groceries on the worktop in the kitchen, my eyes lift automatically to the oversized clock on the wall. 2:30. I doubt very much that Walthamstow High Street boasts a time portal, which means the battery must be flat. A glance at my smartwatch, however, isn't much more encouraging. Even though I tried to walk slowly and browse in the supermarket, my excursion has taken me less than an hour, and I still have an hour and a half to kill. A brief rummage through the drawers after I've put the shopping away reveals a packet of batteries that I probably bought when I moved in. So I put a new one in the clock and reset it while the kettle heats up for my second attempt at a cup of tea. What on earth do people do on Friday afternoons? I wonder as I sit at my desk sipping my tea and staring out of the window. The parking space outside my house is empty, but while I'm watching, a black SUV swings into it, bumping up onto the curb as it does. The driver makes no attempt to straighten it, leaping out almost before it's even stopped. It's a woman, probably around the same age as me, dressed in tight leggings and a crop top. "Hurry up, Rollo!" I can hear her urging as she hauls open the rear door. You've barely got any time to change before your piano lesson. I watch as a boy climbs slowly out of the back seat. He can't be more than 7 years old, and his school uniform consists of black leather shoes with grey socks, grey flannel shorts, and a green blazer with a logo on it, over white shirt and green tie. You don't have to be a great detective to work out that he doesn't attend the local primary dressed like that. The woman practically drags him along the pavement, and for amusement, because I'm ludicrously bored, I set a timer. They reappear 7 minutes and 43 seconds later. The woman is still dressed in the same clothes and looking even more harassed, but the boy appears oblivious as he saunters along behind her. He's now wearing a white t-shirt, dark blue shorts and white trainers, and carrying a music book. She bundles him into the SUV and, with dexterity evidently born of much practice, swings back out of the space and hurtles up the road. If that's what people do on Friday afternoons, they can keep it, I muttered to myself with a smile. 5 o'clock at last. My pulse quickens again as I log onto the Morton Lansdowne website and navigate to the relevant page. When I see my picture and bio among the other partners, I allow a bubble of pride to form in my gut. I study it for a while, letting my achievement sink in, before calling my mum and Phil. They've never really understood anything to do with my work, but surely even they will understand that this is a big thing.
This is a nice surprise, Phil answers. Is everything all right?
Everything's fine, Phil, I reassure him. I'm just calling because I have some good news.
Oh, hang on then. I'd better get your mother on the other handset. She'll only grill me otherwise, and then get upset if I can't remember all the details.
There's a clunk as he puts the handset down, and then I hear him calling,
Kath! Kath! Come quickly. It's Thea on the phone and she says she has news.
Hello, darling, my mother's voice says after a short pause. Phil says you have some news. Are you okay? You're not in any trouble, are you? Despite her best efforts, encouragement has never been one of my mother's strong points. If we were describing her style of parenting since Dad left, as far as I'm concerned anyway, the politest word would be detached. To give her her dues, she did have a lot to cope with initially, and things only improved after she started dating Phil when I was 13. By that time, her somewhat patchy parenting style had become embedded. I suspect the fact that I was fiercely independent also played a part, as she's always been closer to Safi than me. I'm not in trouble, I explain once Phil has rejoined the conversation. As I said to Phil, this is good news. I've been made partner. Can you believe it? There's a long pause. Too long. That's lovely, darling, Mum says eventually. Congratulations. We're very proud. You don't know what that is, do you? I sigh. Not exactly, she admits, but it's obviously important to you, so we're very pleased. Thinking of good news, did Phil tell you about Safi's Ofsted report? I tune her out as she whitters on happily about my sister and the preschool she works at in the town where we grew up. I'm trying not to be annoyed by it. Mum finds it easier to understand what Safi does, but there's no doubt that my bubble of pride has sprung a nasty leak. It wouldn't have killed her to be a little more enthusiastic, would it? After 10 minutes or so, she dries up, and we end the call with our usual promises to speak soon. We probably won't. She never calls me, and I only call them once a month or so. Hoping for a better result, I text Alasdair. Guess you heard the news. I have champagne in the fridge if you fancy celebrating with me. Tea. Kiss, kiss. The ticks go blue straight away and I can see he's typing.
Sounds lovely. Unfortunately, I'm at the airport. Singapore deal is back on. Surprise, surprise. Congrats, though. You totally deserve it. Maybe we can have a belated celebration when I'm back? A. Kiss, kiss. What to do now? For a brief moment, I contemplate calling Mum and Phil back to tell them I'm coming home for the weekend. Maybe after I've explained it properly, they'll be able to show a bit more excitement. Oh, who am I kidding? It'll just be a weekend of them droning on about how clever Safi is, while my expensive champagne goes warm and flat in their glasses. With a sigh, I fire up my laptop, log into the network and navigate to the agreement I was working on earlier. As soon as I double-click to open it, I get a message.
This document is locked for editing by Jessica Thorne. Wow. They obviously haven't hung around reassigning my existing work. It's going to be a very long weekend. Chapter 3. Monday at last. The weekend felt like it was never going to end. I'll confess to having spent quite a bit of it in my study watching the comings and goings of Rollo and the woman with the SUV. I've been trying to work out whether she's his mother or a nanny. They don't share similar physical characteristics. She's blonde with a thin, slightly pinched face, and he's dark-haired with rounder features. He could get those from his father, though, I suppose. By Saturday evening, I'd decided that she probably is the unfortunately named Rollo's mother, simply because of the way she speaks to him. If I were ever to have a child, which is highly unlikely, and a nanny spoke to it like she does, we'd be having a difficult conversation. Being at home with nothing to do is obviously not good for me, because I did start to obsess a little bit about her, trying to imagine what her life is like. Poor Rollo, from what I've seen, is hothoused to within an inch of his life. She's been in and out with him all weekend, and looking at the accessories for each trip, none of them seem to have been for pleasure. He had a swimming lesson on Saturday morning, followed by some kind of martial art. Then they came home for lunch, before he was bundled back into the SUV with a pile of books. I'm guessing for some sort of extra tutoring. Sunday didn't appear to be any more restful, as they were up and out early for football. Judging by the look on his face as he reluctantly clambered into the car in his strip, football is really not his thing. I think Sunday afternoon was some sort of social visit, as she finally swapped the gym gear for a summer dress. But Rollo didn't look any more enthusiastic about it than he had his other activities. Watching Sarah, my made-up name for her, and Rollo has made me reconsider whether I should have taken the opportunity of a rare weekend off to visit my family after all. Although I think I am justified in being pissed off by Mum's lack of engagement on the phone, I've had time to reflect, and I can see it's not all her fault. She sees Safi several times a week and even helped with childcare when her son Louis was a baby, looking after him while Safi was at work until he was old enough to join the preschool. The last time I saw them, on the other hand, was Christmas, a snatched visit for a few hours nearly 6 months ago. I can still remember Safi's puzzled face as Louis unwrapped the chemistry set I thought would be both fun and educational, but which I hadn't noticed was labelled as not suitable for children under 10. "I'll put it to one side for now," she'd said kindly as my cheeks burned with embarrassment. "He'll love it when he's old enough to understand it." Given all of that, is it surprising that Mum and Phil find it easier to connect with Safi than me? Maybe my critical inner voice told me sternly as I watched Rollo departing for one of his many activities. They would take more of an interest in me if I had taken more time to engage with them and explain my life to them. I came very close to calling them again on Sunday afternoon, even picking up my phone a couple of times and bringing up their number, before realizing it would probably be counterproductive. We're all creatures of habit to some extent, and breaking a pattern of monthly phone calls with 2 in the same weekend would probably make them worry that I was having some kind of secret breakdown. So I left it, and now the opportunity has passed. I'm a creature of habit myself, and when I'm not travelling, my daily routine follows a set pattern. I wake with a jolt just before 5, throw on the clothes that I've laid out the night before, and leave the house just over 10 minutes later, dragging my precisely packed cabin bag if I'm going away. It's not much fun in the winter when it's cold and dark, but I find the early mornings magical in the summer. The streets are quiet and the tube on my half-hour ride to Farrington, the closest station to the office, is empty apart from a few other early starters like me. On arriving at the office just before 6, I greet the night security guard and make my way down to the gym in the basement for my workout. After showering and drying my hair, I'm usually at my desk by 7. If we're in the early stages of a transaction, I'm generally away by 8 in the evening, but it can be 10, midnight, or even not at all if a deal is close to the wire. Like I said, you don't go into this line of work if you value your personal time. I love it, though. The constant problem-solving, finding innovative ways around obstacles to deliver results for our clients. The adrenaline surge when you're under intense pressure and spot a way to break through a seemingly impossible barrier is better than the high you could get from any drug, I reckon. In among the usual raft of emails that I dealt with over the weekend, including information about a 3-week trip to New York for my new assignment, was one from our HR department, congratulating me on my new role and summoning me to a meeting with someone called Janice at 7 o'clock in one of the meeting rooms on the 7th floor before I leave for the airport. When I get there, my hair still a little damp from the shower, I find her waiting for me. She's one of those people who looks vaguely familiar. I've probably seen her around but never had occasion to talk to her before. I'd estimate that she's in her early 40s and her generous figure is flattered by her beautifully cut trouser suit. "Sorry I'm late," I tell her, checking my watch. "Oh, you're not. Don't worry," she assures me in a no-nonsense tone. "I had an issue to sort out for one of the other junior partners, so I came in a bit early. I'm Janice, by the way, your PA." Oh, I'm not sure what else to say. I know the partners have personal assistants, but it's not a part of the role I'd really connected to, and if I'm honest, I'm not sure what they do. "It's funny," she remarks. "Every new partner reacts the same way. You're all so focused on the application process and whether you'll get through that you never consider what happens afterwards. I liken it to getting married." I'm intrigued. "What do you mean?" "Partnership applicants are like brides-to-be. All your energy is poured into creating the perfect wedding day, ensuring absolutely nothing can go wrong, because the smallest mishap will ruin everything. That's you during the application process, if you haven't guessed. Then the wedding/partnership interview happens, nothing goes wrong, and you glide through it on a wave of euphoria before going off on honeymoon. But what happens when you get back? You have to learn to be married, and nobody ever seems to think about that part. How was your weekend off, by the way?" "Honestly, I've never been so bored," she laughs. "I think they do that deliberately, bore you to tears to make sure you're chomping at the bit when you come back in. Anyway, the wedding's over, and I'm your new wife. Pleased to meet you." She holds out her hand for me to shake. "Let me see if I can guess what you're thinking now," she continues as we take our seats at the table and she opens the folder in front of her. "You're wondering what it is I do and whether you need me. After all, you've never needed a PA before." I smile. Guilty as charged. "Okay,